So now it's that time of the year where we are all desperate to start sowing some seeds and get the season underway. But before we can do that, there are 3 vital tasks that we must do before we can sow any seeds whatsoever. I'm Gang Gang, welcome to the channel, Gang Gang and Peanut, 2 peas in a pod. Now, as you can see, I've got quite a collection of different containers, cell trays, various plastic items that I use to sow my seeds in. And if you look at some of them, they are a bit mucky. You can see on this one, there's a definite build-up of gunk and rubbish. Some are full of compost from the previous season's sowings. Some are just, well, they're in a bit of a state, aren't they? Some have got watermarks on them. Anyway, these containers are going to need to be cleaned up because there's no point sowing some seeds in a container that possibly is harbouring some diseases from a previous season. And as well as cleaning them, it's a very good time to be checking them for any pests that may have overwintered, any little bugs, slugs, snails, because they do seem to be able to find a way to get into the tiniest of little places and spend the winter. So I'm going to clean these up before I do anything else with these, before I sow any seeds and before I put any compost in, and I'll show you how I do that. Now, the way I do it is I just have 2 buckets, one with some warm soapy water, and the soap is just a normal household washing up liquid. There we are, just a lovely lemony smell. And the other is just a container or a bucket with some fresh clean water in it. And it's a simple process really of just giving them a scrub up, getting all that muck off, getting all the old soil out and checking them to see if there are any pests lurking anywhere. It's a case of the 5 Ps, isn't it? Proper preparation prevents poor performance. And the last thing you want is your new seedlings succumbing to any disease or any problems. There, let me finish this and I'll show you what I do next. Now, what I've done next is I have emptied out the soapy water from this bucket. I filled it with fresh clean water and I've put the seed trays and the cells and the various plastic items that I may use to sow seeds. They're now happily floating around in here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to add to this clean fresh water some of this. This is a sterilising fluid that's used for cleaning things for babies. It's also used in home brewing, and what else does it say on here? And for cleaning and sterilising around the home. Now, I'm going to add a couple of capfuls of this. There we are. To this water. And I'm going to let all of these sit in there for about 20 minutes so they get sterilised. Once they've gone through that little process, they'll go back into some clean fresh water to be rinsed off. Then it's a matter of drying them off and they're ready to use. Clean your seed trays, seed cells and any plastics that you use to sow your seeds, and that will give you the best possible chance of successfully growing these seedlings without risk or fear of any disease or pests. Simple. So there we are, everything nice and clean and fresh, ready to sow seeds into this year. Excellent. Now what do we need to do? Now, item number 2, compost. Now you could buy a proprietary compost, i.e. a commercial compost, such as this. I'm not promoting this in any way, but you could use something like this. or you could make your own, and you can make seed compost. And there are a few requirements for seed compost. It needs to be light, and it needs to be open. It needs to be soft, because the little roots need to make their way through that compost, searching for some nutrients. And also, the seed mix or the seed compost doesn't need to be nutrient rich, because as seedlings, they're not going to need a lot of nutrients. They get most of what they need from the seed initially. They're normally not in a container for very long, so you don't need a nutrient rich seed compost. I make up my own seed compost, and there are different ways of doing it. Let me show you what I do. What I do is I normally use a general purpose compost. I always sift it or riddle it, and what comes out is normally quite a fine and very light compost, because it takes all the lumps, bumps and bits of twigs and whatever else is in there, it gets taken out. Let me sift some of this and I'll show you what I add to it. There, that's all the lumps, such as this, and bumps and all the other bits removed. I'll put that to one side, and you can see that what it leaves is a nice light fluffy compost. Now I'll add to that some of this. This is vermiculite, and for a seed mix I will probably start it at 2 parts compost to 1 part vermiculite, or thereabouts. So I'll add the vermiculite on there. That should be about okay. And then just mix it up. And what this does, it gives the compost an open structure, which means it won't become waterlogged, but the vermiculite itself will hold on to some moisture, which is what the seedlings are going to need, and it would absorb some of the nutrient that may well be in the compost and hold on to that for the seedling. Not that the seedlings will need much nutrient. So that is how I do my seedling mix. That's how I prepare it, and that's what I'll use. Excellent. You could use an inert mixture, which is something like cocoa coir, which has absolutely no nutritional value to a seedling at all. And cocoa coir is the husk of a coconut all ground down. You could use your own mix, or you could go look at other videos where they show you how to make up many varied ways of making up a potting mix. Again, what I do is not necessarily the right way, it's just my way, and that's what I'm showing you. So that is the seedling mix ready. Now we have all of these seeds. Very exciting. But hopefully I've got seeds that will be suitable for the environment that I can provide. There's no point me having a variety of seed such as a tomato that needs to be grown in a greenhouse or a polytunnel if I didn't have a greenhouse or a polytunnel. And equally, if I was growing purely in containers, I'd need to ensure I have seeds that are going to be suitable for growing in a container. Indeed, there are many seeds nowadays which are bred specifically for growing in small spaces and containers. There are small calabrese with a small head, and the same with cauliflowers. There are varieties of just about everything that you can grow outside. So depending where you're growing, be it a greenhouse, a polytunnel, in your garden, or on an allotment, or in some containers, make sure you've got the right seeds for the environment that you can provide. Another consideration with the seeds you select or choose is, are the seeds viable? Which means, will they germinate and grow into a plant? And if you look on the back of most seed packets, it will have written on there the date that they were packed and a recommended date to use the seeds by. Now this is a requirement that the seed sellers have to put on, but in my experience the use by date doesn't always mean that the seeds won't be viable. There are a few ways of checking if your seeds are viable. If they're older seeds, you may have had them kicking around for a few seasons, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, who knows. But there are ways of checking. One of the ways of checking is to drop them in water. If they are a larger seed, such as a pea or a bean, if you drop them into some water, the ones that float are not viable, and the ones that sink should be fine to use. If you have some smaller seeds, such as tomato seeds or chili seeds, there's a way of checking if they will be viable by just sprinkling a few of the seeds that you have onto a damp kitchen towel, popping it into a bag and keeping an eye every couple of days and see if the seeds germinate. Now there are different rates of germination. If you put 10 seeds onto a paper towel that was damp and 6 of them germinated, you've got a 60% germination rate. So just because the seeds are old doesn't mean they aren't any good. And finally, when you're choosing your seeds, don't be afraid to experiment and try something new. This season I'm growing varieties, 90% of which I've never grown before. I may have grown the type of vegetable, but I'm growing new varieties. And to me, that's where the fun of it all is. So don't be afraid to try new things. You never know, you might find a brand new favourite variety. So 3 steps. Clean the containers. Clean the seed trays, the seed cells, the plastic cups, pots, or whatever you're going to sow your seeds in. Make sure they're clean to prevent any problems with pests and diseases. Make up a potting mix, a seed sowing mix. Use a proprietary one or make up your own. And there are different ways of doing this, and there are many videos on the internet, on the YouTube, to show you how you can do this. And finally, make sure you choose the right seeds for the environment that you can provide. Enjoy it. Sowing seeds and growing vegetables is not supposed to be a chore. It's supposed to be something that can be really enjoyable. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a big thumbs up or subscribe by clicking the button down below somewhere, or send me a comment and I will respond. I really like getting comments because sometimes you give me good ideas that help make me a better gardener. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Gang Gang. This is Gang Gang and Peanut, 2 peas in a pod. And as ever, until next time, take care.